Deposition of Sheriff Tony Liggett, State of Indiana v. Richard Allen, examined by Mr. Andy Baldwin. Date excerpt, page 11. Q. State your name for the record. A. Tony Liggett. Could you spell both first and last for the record? T-O-N-E-L-I-G-E-T. I'm guessing this is not your first deposition, correct? Correct. Okay. So everything I'm about to tell you is something you already know, but I'll say it anyway. Obviously, Sharon is recording, right? Q. The uh-huhs and uh-uhs are the main problems we run into with deponents, along with head shakes versus yes or no answers. If you do that, I'll ask, is that a yes or a no? I'm not busting your chops, I just want a clear record so I don't have to interpret it later. Secondly, I know we're going to be here about 3 hours. If at any point you need a break or want to speak with Nick privately, just let me know. You're not being held hostage. Third, sometimes I think I have a great question in my head, and by the time it comes out, it makes no sense. Don't answer any question that doesn't make sense. It doesn't offend me if you say, "That doesn't make sense, Andy, can you rephrase it?" I'd prefer that. It'll be shocking if that doesn't happen at least once today. I think that's it. What, if anything, have you done to prepare for today's deposition? Well, since we've had a couple of different attempts at it, I've reviewed what I believed I needed to review. Okay, now I know there are multiple hard drives of data. Was there anything in particular you were reviewing, just what you wrote, or other people's reports and notes as well? Mostly general material that I knew about or had some involvement with. Okay, we'll talk later about how the investigation unfolded. Back then, were you considered the lead detective on the case? I know you're sheriff now, A. No. At that time, I was the second detective in our department. Kevin Hammond was the lead detective. Okay, he retired in October 2021. So after he retired, it was just you handling it for your department? Yes. Did anyone replace you as the second investigator on Delphi? No. So that was October 2021? Somewhere around then? Yes. Vehicle location timeline. Q, I'm going to start with a series of questions focusing on the search warrant affidavit. Is it your contention that Richard Allen's black Ford Focus was parked at the old CPS building at approximately 1:29 p.m. on February 13, 2017? A. Yes, at 4:45 p.m. Q, at 2 p.m. A. Yes, at 2:14 p.m. A. Yes. Q, at 2:15 p.m. A. Yes, at 2:30 p.m. Yes. Q, at 4:45 p.m. Yes. Q, at 3 p.m. A. Yes. Q, at 3:15 p.m. A. Yes. Q, at 3:30 p.m. A. Yes. Q, at 4 p.m. A. Yes. Q, at 4:30 p.m. Okay. What time do you believe Richard Allen's Ford Focus was no longer parked the old CPS building? Around 4 p.m. And what are you basing that on? The last witness who reported seeing a small black car parked there. And who was that? A Sarah Carbaugh. Do you consider Sarah Carbaugh a credible witness? Yes. How important is it to the timeline that Rick Allen's Ford Focus would be the car seen traveling westbound on 300 North on the Hoosier Harvest Store camera at 1:27 p.m.? A. I don't think it's highly important. Why not? A. Because he said he was there at 1:30. How do you know that Richard Allen said he was there at 1:30? A. I read a report from Lieutenant Dan Doolin with the DNR. Is that the same report that states Mr. Allen was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30? A. Correct. Q. So your interpretation is that Allen was on the trail between 1:30 p.m. and 3:30 p.m.? Approximately, yes. Q. Was there any evidence from any source indicating that Richard Allen was not on the trail between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m.? Not that I can recall, no. Q. What about Richard Allen's own words? Did he ever state what time he was on the trail? A. When we interviewed him, he changed his time to 12 or 12:30 p.m. The report from which you're referencing, this assertion that Richard Allen said he was on the trail between 1:30 and 3:30, where did that conversation occur with Lieutenant Dan Doolin? In a parking lot. I don't recall off the top of my head exactly where he said, but I believe it was at Save-A-Lot. Did Lieutenant Doolin record this conversation? A. No, he did not have a recording of it. Did Lieutenant Doolin handwrite notes about the conversation? I don't know. Okay, Well, that's a pretty important thing, whether Richard Allen was saying I was on the trail at 1:30 or I left the trail at 1:30. I'd think you'd be looking for those notes. Have you looked for them? A. I've looked through the notes and I recall asking Dan Doolin about them, but I don't recall if he did or did not have any. Would you have provided the defense with any handwritten notes from Dr. Doolin about that interview if they exist? I believe so, yes. Do you believe those handwritten notes exist? I don't know. I'd have to go back and review to give an accurate answer. Did Dr. Doolin make any mistakes in the report he drafted following his interview with Richard Allen? None that I'm aware of. Delay between interviews. Q. Why was it 5 years before this report of Dan Doolin's came to your attention to the degree that you brought Richard Allen back in to talk to you? A. Sure. The interview of Richard Allen that Lieutenant Doolin says he conducted was on February 16, 2017. Richard Allen was not brought in for a second interview until October 13, 2022. Why was there a 5.5-year delay between his first and second interview? A. Someone marked that lead or that information as fully cleared in Orion. Was one reason for that delay a clerical error? I'm not sure what you mean by clerical error, but yes, somewhere along the way in Orion, someone marked it as fully covered. What does fully covered mean? It means the matter was considered completely handled. Nothing else needed to be done. So if it was fully covered, how did Richard Allen get back on the radar in October 2022? One of the ladies working with us at the investigation center, she wasn't part of the original investigation, was going through old files. When she found something unfamiliar, she'd bring it to me or another investigator. She found Dr. Doolin's report that way. Q. Who was that lady? A. Kathy Shank. Spell that, please. Kathysha. Timeline and witnesses. I think where we left off, you said the timeline of Rick's Ford Focus being the car passing westbound on 300 North wasn't overly important. How confident are you that the vehicle you've identified as Richard Allen's black Ford Focus is the one that ultimately parked at the CPS building? A. Confident. Is it your contention that Richard Allen was the person Betsy Blair observed on the high bridge from about 50 feet away? Yes. What evidence supports that answer? A. The timing, the 1:30 to 3:30 time frame he said he was there, the fact that he passed girls who described him and his clothing around 1:30 when he said he was heading toward the bridge, and he himself said he was out on the bridge. Any other evidence supporting that Betsy Blair saw Richard Allen? None that I can recall right now. Contacts with Betsy Blair. Q. How many times have you talked to Betsy Blair? 2 or 3 times. Were any of those conversations videotaped? A. Yes, probably all of them. So we should have video of every conversation you had with Betsy Blair? A. Correct. Q. What other officers, to your knowledge, have talked to Betsy Blair? A. I know others have, but I don't recall who. How would I find out who did? A. There should be reports or documentation in discovery. When you talked to Betsy Blair, were other officers present? Yes. I believe Kevin Hammond was with me once and Steve Mullen another time. When was the last time you spoke with Betsy Blair? Any time in 2023? No, other than a phone call when you subpoenaed her. She called me about that. What about in 2022? A. Probably. Q. And if so, those should be videotaped as well. Yes. Sarah Carbaugh observation. Q. Is it your contention that Sarah Carbaugh observed Richard Allen walking westbound on 300 North? A. Yes. Where exactly did she say she encountered the person the PCA describes as muddy and bloody? A. Between the Mears house, a brick house, and the cemetery. My recollection is it was a little closer to the cemetery, along the road. The PCA says she saw the person on the north side of the road. Is that correct? Correct. And she said that person was walking west? Correct. Q. The Hoosier Harvest Store has a camera that would capture anyone continuing west. Was there ever a person seen walking westbound on 300 North, caught on that camera between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. on February 13, 2017? Not to my knowledge. Q. Any theory why this person wouldn't appear on the camera? They could have gone off into a field or back into the woods. Q. What evidence supports Sarah Carbaugh's observation other than her own statement? A. Just her statement. Q. And you find her credible? A. Yes. Interviews with Sarah Carbaugh. How many times have you talked to Sarah Carbaugh? A, twice, I believe. Were those videotaped? A, yes. Q, were other officers present? The first time Indiana State Police was there, I don't recall their names. The second time, I believe Steve Mullen was with me. When was the last time you spoke with Sarah Carbaugh? A, I believe 2019, though I'd have to review. Witness credibility. Q, do you believe Betsy Blair is a credible witness? A, yes. QI. A, she was just a random person who came forward. I can't think of any reason she'd make something up. Q, anything in her background that would cause you to doubt her credibility? Substance abuse, mental health, etc.? A, nothing I'm aware of. Same for Sarah Carbaugh. Why do you believe she's credible? And is there anything in her background that would cause doubt? Nothing that would lead me to believe she's not credible. Preparation and PCA review. Knowing that a Frank's motion is pending, I presume you reviewed your probable cause affidavit for the search warrant with a fine-tooth comb in preparation for this deposition. Is that a fair statement? Answer redacted. Deposition of Sheriff Tony Liggett, case State of Indiana v. Richard Allen. Examined by Mr. Andy Baldwin. Excerpt, continuation, pages 310-551, probable cause affidavit errors. Q. Okay, were any of the mistakes you identified in the probable cause affidavit what you would call major mistakes? A, like finding the phone. Yeah, we all knew where the phone was found. That particular one of those things where when you read your stuff, you just assume what it says. Then, so other than the phone location mistake in your search warrant affidavit, is there anything else off the top of your head that you think, yeah, that's another mistake I made? Something that stands out to you right now? A, no. I'd have to review it again. Nothing that stood out when you read it last night like, oh, that's a big mistake? No. Drafting the search warrant affidavit. Q, I want to ask about the process of drafting the search warrant affidavit because I know it varies by county. In some, law enforcement drafts it without prosecutor involvement. In others, the prosecutor does it with minimal law enforcement input. And sometimes the judge asks for changes. In this case, with the search warrant dated October 13th, 2022, who drafted it? A, I drafted a report. And the prosecutor put together the final product. Okay, where is that report you drafted and gave to the prosecutor? A, you should have it. I've got a lot of reports. Do you know what it would look like or say at the top? A, I don't. I don't think it said anything at the top. It would have just been a Word document. Okay, even though the prosecutor drafted the final affidavit, did you receive it as a printed hard copy, or was it emailed to you for signature? I believe it was email. If you had reviewed it and noticed inaccuracies, what would you have done? Called the prosecutor to make changes or edited it yourself? A, I'd have had him change it on his end. Would you have had any problem making corrections to the probable cause affidavit if something was inaccurate? No, I would have had the prosecutor correct it. Discussion off the record. Re-interview of Betsy Blair in the second sketch. Q. Why was there a second interview of Betsy Blair? I don't know exactly how many interviews there were, so I can't say for certain which was second. Fair. Why was Betsy Blair interviewed more than once? When I decided to re-interview her around 2019, I believe my role early on was as the tip guy. I wanted to re-examine the timeline and review the Hoosier Harvest store footage, so I brought her back in. Okay. One of the things we received in discovery was the second sketch, the one of a different person than the first hat sketch. It indicated that Betsy Blair was the source. Was she? Yes, she was the source of the second released sketch. When was that second sketch released publicly? A, I believe in 2019. Why was it released then? A, because it was another sketch we had. In fact, it was the original one that had been drawn earlier. We decided to release it at that time. Why wasn't that second sketch released in 2017? I don't remember the exact conversation, but I believe her sketch showed something covering the mouth. We decided to wait and not release it then. Q. By covering the mouth, do you mean like a mask? Yes, something obscuring the face. So because Betsy Blair's sketch had that feature, the thought was it didn't show enough of the face to be useful? A. That's my recollection. But remember, we had a unified command system. It wasn't just my decision. Right? Who made those release decisions? The Unified Command. It was a collective decision. Was that the formal name, Unified Command? A yes. It was literally a unified command consisting of multiple agencies. And who was part of it? A, from our department, Kevin Hammond and myself. From Indiana State Police, Jerry Holman and Jay Harper. Later on, Dave Vito joined. At the beginning, Mike Peasley from the FBI was also involved. Witnesses on the trail Q. Do you believe Betsy Blair encountered Richard Allen on the trail based on the evidence? A, yes. Do you believe Bree Wilbur ran into Richard Allen on the trail? Yes. Do you believe Anna Spath ran into Richard Allen on the trail? Yes. Did you personally speak with any of those girls? A. I sat in on an interview with Bree Wilbur in 2020. Q. Was her story in 2020 consistent with her 2017 statement? Yes. Was that interview videotaped? A. Believe so. Bench photo and trail details. Q. In the PCA, it says the girls, Wilbur, Spath, and Voorhees, took a photo near a bench at 1:26 p.m. Which bench was that? A. I went out there with Rayleigh Voorhees, yes. Q. As you head from Freedom Bridge toward High Bridge, which side of the trail was that bench on? A. The left side. Was it the first bench you'd encounter from Freedom Bridge? A. It was directly behind some houses along 300 North. Off the top of my head, I don't recall if it was the first bench, but it was one of the first behind a house. So that bench from where they took the photo is behind a house on the left-hand side? Correct, behind a house. No houses on the right, that side is a creek. Could you see the house through the woods at that time? Yes, when I went out there with her, you could. Do you know if that bench has been moved since 2017? A. I don't know. Could you determine it if you went back? Yes. When did you walk the trail with Rayleigh Voorhees? I feel like it was 2019, though I'm not positive. After the girls took that photo, they headed toward the Freedom Bridge and encountered the man you believe was Richard Allen. Do you know exactly where between the bench and Freedom Bridge that encounter occurred? No. When walking with Rayleigh, did you ask her to pinpoint where on the trail she met the man? A. I don't believe we did. Q. Was that walkthrough videotaped? A. I believe so. Betsy Blair's statement, the main hub of trails. Let's discuss this line from the PCA. Blair said that the male was standing on the first platform of the Monon High Bridge, approximately 50 feet away from her. Blair turned around at the bridge and continued her walk. Approximately halfway between the bridge and the main hub of trails, she passed two girls walking toward the high bridge. What is meant by main hub of trails? A. At the Mears house on 300 North, there was an entrance, gated off. But once inside, you could turn left toward High Bridge, right toward Freedom Bridge, or continue straight toward the creek. That intersection, that's what I called the hub. So the hub is essentially the main trail intersection at the Mears entrance. A. Correct. Dan Doolin Q. Has Letter Dan Doolin ever been disciplined as a law enforcement officer, to your knowledge? I don't know. Does he work with you? I thought he was a conservation officer. Yes, he's a conservation officer, currently a captain in that division. Does he do any side work with the sheriff's department? No. Has he, to your knowledge, has he ever been involved in a case where evidence was suppressed because of the things that he did? A. I have no idea. Why didn't you include in the probable cause affidavit Richard Allen, what he told you on October 13, 2022, that he had been at the trail at noon? Around noon, either before or right after noon. A. His memory from, what was it? February 26th was what I went off of. Okay, another question that I have about while I'm on that topic is I tried to, from where Richard was living at the time, it doesn't seem like it would make a whole lot of sense that he would be on 300 North heading west. Did you ever have any theories on why, if you believe that the car captured at, I think, 2:20 or 1:27 p.m. is Richard Allen's Ford? Black Ford Focus? Do you have any theories why he would have been traveling westbound on 300 North rather than a shorter route? A. I don't. I mean, am I correct in saying that from where Richard lived there was a much shorter route where he would have been headed eastbound on 300 North to get to the old CPS parking? If it's shorter, it's not much shorter. Okay? And if you don't have to go through town going the other way. Okay, how important is it, as far as the timeline is concerned, placing Richard Allen at the trail at roughly 2 p.m. when Betsy Blair saw a person on the high bridge? How important is it that that vehicle parked at the CPS building be black, for example, in order for the timeline to be a good timeline? I'm going to object. I think you're getting into work product. I've kind of let it slide up till now. The how important is it? But I think you're getting into work product at this point, so... Oh, you and I will have disagreements on that all day long, but I agree. But I'm going to advise him, just rephrase the question. Yeah, that was a bad question that I can get behind. It's a bad question. So you said earlier that it was your contention that Richard Allen's black Ford Focus was parked at the old CPS building at 2:14, at 2:15 p.m., at 2:30 p.m. How important then was it that the vehicle being parked at the CPS building was a black Ford Focus in terms of establishing a timeline? I think it helps. Well, let's do the converse. How problematic might it be for the timeline if the vehicle parked at the CPS building at 2 p.m. or 2:14 p.m. or 2:15 p.m. or 2:30 p.m. is not a black vehicle? Then he had another vehicle we would have or did check into, but the people said our witnesses just confirmed what he said on February 16th. Our witnesses just confirmed his timeline, so that's the importance of it. Which witnesses would those be? Betsy Blair, Terry Wilson, Sarah Carbaugh, and Wesley McWhirter. All right, I want to talk about Westville for a minute. And I know it sounds like Toby Leesenby was the person that drafted the safekeeping order. Is that correct? Yeah, I had nothing to do with it. Did you even know that that was happening? The safekeeping order? I think I did after the ball was rolling. I did. Okay, did you have any input into the safekeeping order at all? And I think you told us at the last hearing, when Brad was asking you questions, I think is when this happened, that you had been to Westville earlier this year to talk to Richard Allen. Correct. Tell me about that. I was confused about that. We went to myself, Jerry Holloman, and Steve Mullen. Went to Westville. Okay, what was the purpose of that, going to Westville? I don't remember the specific reason, but it was to talk to Richard, and he didn't want to talk, so okay. What part of the year was it? Was it cold? Or do you remember what the month was? I don't. It's been a blur since becoming sheriff. Sure. So I don't remember the exact time. Okay, I think what you had told us was earlier in the year. And I got the feeling it was in January or February or maybe even December. But does any of that ring a bell or no Q? Was it? Well, then I guess I can cut to the chase a little bit differently. Is there an email or is there something out there that would say, hey, we're going up there to see you guys? No, I did not set it up. I don't know who set that up. Okay. If it was Jerry or Steve, I don't know, but for some reason I feel like it was December, but I don't know. Yeah, I was getting to that. Why would you be going to talk to Richard Allen in December or January or February? December of 2020. Let's say 2022 or January, February, March of 2023. I don't recall what the point of going there was. Okay? Was that, and you said you're not the one that organized it, it was some either Holman or Mullen, I assume. Okay, all right. And we weren't when Jerry Holman was the one that was in the room with him, so I wasn't even a part of the interview. So Jerry Holman did talk to Richard Allen when he went out with you and Mullen to Westville. I believe he just was told that he didn't want to talk. Were you in the room when Jerry Holman was trying to talk to Richard Allen? No. Oh, okay. So Jerry Holman, was Mullen in the room with Jerry Holman when he tried? Okay. So Jerry Holman alone went in and talked to Richard Allen, is that right? Attempted to talk to him, yes. Okay. When did you become the sheriff? January of 23? Was it January 1st? Yes. Okay, and I just need to understand the dynamics thereof, so you tell me what your memory is of when you showed up at Westville for this visit. We went through security. Steve Mullen and I went to a room or office, and Jerry went to another room or office to attempt to talk to Richard, and it was very brief, and he didn't want to talk. Did you guys all drive in together? No, I rode with Steve Mullen. So Jerry Holman was separate? Okay, and did you all arrive around the same time? Jerry was in the parking lot, waiting for us. And did you guys have to go through security like everybody else does? Yes. All right. Did you get into a vehicle and drive to the back, or was a yes? Okay. So do you think that where you, Jerry Holman and Mullen went was to where Richard was being housed? I believe so. Okay. And having been there a few times, I know when you go in, you walk, I don't know, 50 feet or something, and there's a little place to the right, a little command area where you have to sign in. Do you remember signing in? Yeah, we always have to sign in. I'm presuming everybody does. Do you remember signing in? I don't remember. Okay. Do you remember why it was that Jerry Holman alone went and attempted to talk to Richard Allen? No, and just trying to narrow this time frame down, how long had the case been going on? Do you feel when you went to see Richard Allen with Jerry Holman and Mullen at Westville? How long the case had been going on? Yeah, I mean, well, that's a good point. How long had Richard Allen been at Westville approximately when you, Jerry Holman, and Mullen went to see him, Richard Allen, at Westville? Hours, days, weeks, months? I don't know exactly when he got to Westville, so it's hard to, I feel like it was like November, December, but I don't remember when it was. Okay. All right. Yeah, what was the point of you and Mullen going to Westville if you weren't actually going to go into the room and talk to Richard Allen? I believe the plan was for us to watch the interview. Oh, okay. So light bulb. So were you able to see into the room where it was shut down? He didn't want to talk before that was even set up. So, did Jerry Holman actually have face-to-face contact with Richard Allen to your knowledge? I believe so, yes. Okay. And did you see Jerry Holman walk down the hallway and turn and go into a room? Or he was in the room. Before Richard was brought in, we were in the room, right? Where the interview was going to happen. And then Steve Mullen and we went to a different office and we were supposed to watch the video. Oh, as it was like live streamed in or something. Yeah. Oh, okay, versus looking through a glass and seeing, right? Okay, was Richard Allen represented at the time that you guys went out there by counsel? I don't believe so. Okay. We were getting tips saying if you look here, this tree is a man. Yeah, or those things. The pixelation is off on this or that. I've heard that too. There's 3 guys standing behind her that were railings. So, yeah. But at least I've now confirmed that photograph is not just an internet sensation. It actually exists. Because we haven't had it, and I'm not accusing anybody of discovery, because there's a vast amount of crap, and we've gone through it, and I just haven't seen it yet. So hopefully we'll be able to get to it. So, all right, so I want to talk now about the flow of information, because I know that it was crazy there, especially at the beginning. So, and you said you were kind of in charge of tips. Were you in charge of tips? I never said I was in charge of tips. Oh, I'm sorry. I said I was a tip guy. You were a tip guy? Okay. Yeah. What does that mean? You're a tip guy. I don't want to say I read every tip that came in, but I was one of a couple of people that would review all the tips, prioritize them, and push them down the line, up the line. Okay? However you want to look at them. Who else was a tip guy? Jay Harper did tips, okay? We were the 2 primary in the beginning. Other people looked at tips too. There were several people that had access to the tips, but throughout the duration, I was the guy reading a lot of the tips. That was our tip guy. So I understand what you're going through, We heard a tip, for example, of, oh, look at this photo. His balls are hanging on the left side of his pants. In this photo that Richard Allen has balls hanging on the right side. So there, I've solved the problem, solved the case. So you said that you would prioritize the tips. Kind of, we tried to have a scale, like 1 is this is 0, this is no good. 10 is, this is a big time tip, although I don't know that we ever had any of those. Did you have a similar scale, or how did you guys do that? Q. No, the Orion system you could not get rid of a tip, but you could make a tip not go anywhere, a normal tip that you would just consider average, and then a priority or an immediate level. It sounds like, was that a decision that you and Harper made, or was that a decision like that you'd input the information and it would spit out? We made the decision. Okay, I'm glad I asked that because I thought you were saying it spit out something. So what was your basic way of determining whether it was there's nothing to see here, or this is an average tip, or this is a high priority tip? What was your basic way of processing? It varied to a degree, but we got a lot of tips that said my ex-husband, or there were repetitive, not necessarily about a person, but my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend, my daughter's ex-boyfriend. Things that didn't really tie into the case. For instance, we started asking, how is the person tied to Delphi? We wanted specific information so we could make a better determination, right? On priority. And would you actually talk to the people on the tip line? Or was it an email situation? Or can you describe that for me? There was the FBI had set up a tip line, and they had analysts that would, if people called in, they would talk to analysts, and then they would input their information, and we would get that. Email was another form of a way of getting tips, and people would come to where our various command centers were set up and verbally give them as well. Those would be written down and put in the system. How many command centers were there, if you know? 3. Were they all in the Delphi area? Yes. Okay. And who would be manning the command centers? Who would be anybody that was there to specifically investigate the case? Okay, so that could be just was that kind of an all hands on deck? Hey, we need you to go to the command center and people might be coming in, or it was always, to use the word hub again, it was the hub of everything going on, so there was constantly people there. Okay? Especially in the beginning, almost 24 hours. When you say people, you're talking about law enforcement officers? Correct. Okay, so it sounds to me like the tips that made its way to the FBI tip line would then be, you'd be getting an email? And I think I've seen some of those. Now that makes a little bit of sense to me, what I've seen, like an FBI. I think I now understand what that means. But you also said people would email you directly. Is that email? We had an email. We had a tip line email that was set up. Oh, okay. And then that didn't go through the FBI, that email tip line? No, okay. Did that go directly to you, or was, yeah, there was a handful. There was a few people that got those emails. How would we be able to distinguish between the tips that came in through the FBI and the tips that came in through that email? Is it just what it looks like on a piece of paper? Well, generally, if I got an email, I copied and pasted the whole email into the Orion system. All right, let me go back here. All right, who ultimately made the call to stop investigating a certain tip? I know what in my brain I want to say. So you guys are at the front end of the tip, and it sounds like you did make some calls like this. This doesn't have any, there's nothing here, so I'm not going to even pursue this anymore. Correct. Did you have a word for that? You said I'd stop? Or what did you have? Was there a phrase for that? The tip was dead? Or, I can't remember the exact word that was used in the Orion system, but it just nothing was done with it. It's still in the system, just nothing was done. Was there a way to memorialize that nothing was being done on this? Yes. Okay. And how was that done? Just the same as if prioritizing them, no further leads. That was, no further leads. No further leads. So then, and that sounds like what Richard Allen, when Doolin interviewed Richard Allen, it was a no further leads. Is that correct? Am I thinking about that correct? I believe they actually marked that as fully covered. What does that mean, fully covered? Like done. Okay, I gotta ask then, what's the difference between no further leads and fully covered? I'm sorry, I'm not very smart. I'm trying to figure this out. No further leads in my head, that is, there was just nothing to this to start with. Fully covered means someone did something with that, and it was completed. Okay, the end result was basically the same? Where we're done doing any work on this? Correct. It's just a matter of, in the fully covered, somebody actually did something, maybe interviewed a witness or reviewed something, but in the no further leads, it didn't even get passed. I think that's a good general way of putting it. Awesome. RL, I know Ron Logan obviously was a big candidate in terms of a suspect. And so I want to talk about the bigger guys, Like, I understand early on that there's some bad tips and things that are fully covered or no further leads. But like a guy like Ron Logan, where he's being investigated pretty hard, understandably, who in the end also makes the decision that we're done. We're done investigating Ron Logan. A. Generally, whoever the people or persons are that were investigating that person, bring it to the Unified Command. And Q. Okay, so this Unified Command seems to be a big... So let me ask it this way. Is it fair to say that if there is a big-ticket suspect or a big-ticket lead, that Unified Command would be in charge of saying whether to continue investigating or to stop investigating? Again, I think that's a pretty general way of putting it, but okay, yeah. And yeah, were there arguments within the what did you call that again, the command? It's on a different page. What did you call that, the command? Unified Command. Unified Command, hey. Did we always agree? No, Q. Yeah, I know in my own law firm, I get into some heated exchanges with my own law partners and other lawyers. Was there like raised voices ever in Unified Command over things? I'm sure there probably was, but nothing stands out in my head. Was there any single suspect that there was a division between people in the Unified Command? I think that this needs to be pursued, and then the other side, no, this is dumb. We're not going to continue on down that road, wasting, energy. Did that ever kind of thing happen? A, no. Within Unified Command, no. I don't believe there was anything like that. And there were cases, just so it's clear too, there were cases that I stepped out and investigated other cases. So there are periods of time where I'm not in the case even. Oh, so there might be like a rape case going on, and you would step out and do that case? Correct. Unrelated. Okay, I got that. Then who would take over if you were had the lead involved in a different case? A, nobody. I'm confused about the role of the FBI and how they got involved, and then how they ended up not being involved any longer. Can you shed some light on that for me? How did they first get involved? Did they approach you guys? Did you approach them? Hey, on the February 14th, 2017, Rich Davies showed up to our organized search and saw it on the news and just came. We didn't ask. They didn't. He was just there to help search, I believe. And once we found them, he offered, or the FBI offered, to help. Okay. And what was the role of the FBI? I know they put a tip line together. Right, they investigated. In the beginning, eventually the FBI stopped investigating, but they were a part of the team, part of Unified Command, brought FBI agents in. You said they stopped at some point in time investigating. Why did they stop at some point in time investigating? A, I don't recall that there was a specific instance or reason. Q, in the movie The Fugitive, the FBI or the federal marshals show up and they get the local guys out. Local guys want to maintain control over the scene, and then and then he kicks him out and says, hey, we're taking over. Turf war. And I just got out of a murder trial where there was some turf war. Was there a turf war going on between any of the entities? State police, FBI, local police? A, none that I'm aware of. Q, did anybody from Carroll County ask the FBI to leave? From Carroll County? Right? No. Do you know if anybody from the state police asked the FBI to get out? I don't know. Have you heard rumblings that the state police may have asked the FBI to get out? Anything's possible, but specifically no. And when you say in charge, you mean for Carroll County? Right? Okay. Well, let's say Kevin Hammond was in charge of Carroll County on this murder investigation up until the time he left. And then you were in charge for Carroll County because this is your county and the murders were committed in your county. Was there a requirement that state police or FBI or anyone for that matter would go to you if they found information that they thought was important? A, it would be brought to Unified Command. Unified Command, okay? Is Unified Command still together or have they disbanded? Or A, I would say we're still together. Do we meet nearly as often? No. Is the investigation still ongoing? Yes. Okay? Like, when was the last time you did any actual investigation work? A, for myself, October, November. Q, last year? Okay, has anybody on Unified Command? While we're talking about that bullet, one thing that we haven't seen, we've seen photographs of the bullet taken from from a high perspective and then kind of going down before, as it should be done, I think, before it's taken out and collected as evidence. Who does the photographs, by the way? A. That would have been an Indiana State Police crime scene tech. One thing I haven't seen, though, and I don't know if you know whether it exists or not, we haven't seen any photos of the individual bullet taken out and set next to a measuring device like a ruler or something so that you can see the entire bullet. Do you know if that type of photograph was taken? I've not seen one of those either. Okay. I mean, that would be important, wouldn't it? To take a full photo of the bullet that was allegedly on the ground? I would think that would be important. I would think so. Okay. Where was that bullet ultimately stored once it was collected as a piece of evidence? I don't know. I assume at the Indiana State Police lab. Was any evidence collected in the Carroll County storage locker room that you know of? No. All right. I do want to talk about the crime scene. I mean, I've seen the photographs. The crime scene itself, when the girls were found. I'm confused about how they were found. I know it was around noon on the 14th, but how did that all go down? Who found them? And then how quickly did the police come on the scene and all that kind of thing? There was a search party found them. There's a driveway on the opposite side of the creek that goes back to the Weber residence. Someone up on that driveway looking down towards the creek thought he saw clothing, so he directed another search party. He knew someone on the other side of the creek or something. He called them and said, "Hey, I think I might see clothes." I don't remember the exact conversation, and he directed them there and they found the bodies. Kuhn, what were the names of those people in that search party, if you know? I would have to review That's another one of those things. Can you write that down? I really need to figure out who those people are. And again, it might be in one of those hard drives, but I can't figure that out. Did you ever talk to the people that were a part of the original search party that came upon the scene? That came upon the girls? Yes. When I got out there the day they found them, there was a lady crying up by the cemetery, and I just asked her if she was all right. But I don't believe I had any involvement with talking to any of those people. Now in my mind, I'm trying to think about how this works. So they're there, I'm sure they called the police do show up, and I want to talk more in detail about that, but then I would presume they'd say, "You guys need to leave," and "You guys need to be quiet about this, we can't be talking about that." I would presume that might be a part of the conversation. Off on they? I didn't talk to them. Okay, I don't know what was said. Q. To the best of your knowledge, who showed up first from law enforcement? Two guys from my department, Darren Giancola and Drew Yoder, I believe were the first two law enforcement officers. Darren Giancola and Drew Yoder? I'm sure that there would be could you spell that if you know? A Darren is D-A-R-O-N, Giancola is G-I-A-N-C-O-L-A. And who was the other fella? A Drew Yoder. It's D-R-U-Y-O-D-er. Okay, are they still with your department? Yes. All right, and how did you know that they were the first to arrive? They told me. I was shortly behind them. Okay, so were you the third person from law enforcement on the scene? I don't know that I was the third one, but there was a few of us that got there about the same time. Okay, what about Holman? Did he show up? I assume. At some point, I don't know when, but yeah, he was there. I know, and I don't know that I've seen it, but I know that on big crime scenes, there's usually a crime scene log. Crime scene log. Was there a crime scene log in this case? Yes. And who would have been in charge of the crime scene log, if you know? I remember there was a state police officer doing the crime scene log. Are they the ones that put the crime scene log together, do you think? Yes. Okay, figure that out. I've seen the photographs. What did you guys think about what was going on there? What did you think the case was when you came upon the crime scene? There's these sticks. Sticks are on these girls and that kind of thing. Did you have any thoughts on that? Like what that was? Or did anybody? What was? Well, I've seen photographs. There's this F painted onto a tree. I don't know if that's related. There's sticks that are on these girls, which is kind of weird. What was the investigation angle on those sticks on the girls and the F or whatever it was painted on the tree? For starters, the sticks and whatever leaves and stuff could have been concealment. A poor job of it, but could have been concealment. Okay. Sticks. There were some investigators that looked into various groups that use the sticks for Nordic. I don't think Nordic is the right word for it, but that looked into it from that angle too. How quickly was that angle looked into, with the sticks being something Nordic related? And again, Nordic may not be the proper term. I'm not using it, but I think it was fairly quickly that was looked into. Like the same day or the next day after the girls were found. A, I don't know. I don't know an exact time of when it Q, and that's fine, but it was very quick. It was quick. All right. Who do you know of that thought? Oh, this is you said some type of group that might have... Yeah. Who came up with that idea? I don't know. Okay, what kind of groups are we talking about that might have left the scene that way that was being investigated? I can't remember. Again, in the beginning I did mostly tips and... Okay, A would be fed information, but I don't, off the top of my head, I can't remember the names of the groups. Well, I'm guessing it wasn't like, the Girl Scouts that we can eliminate them, but was it like a hate group or a weirdo, the Branchville Davidians down in Texas? Was it that type of group? Or, yeah, it's some sort of religious type. They use runes. I can't think of the... Did you say runes? Runes. How do you spell that? R-U-N-E-S. Okay. Has what? What are runes? A, they're symbols. Where did you hear that phrase, runes? Who did just as part of the investigation? Yeah. Somewhere along the way? Okay. Has that been ruled out that the thing on the tree and the sticks on the girls were runes? Has that been ruled out? Yeah. I know that we had people involved that knew about those things. Again, I don't know if you want to say ruled out specifically, but they did not believe that those were what we were looking at. Okay. And who is they that did not believe that the sticks and the paint on the tree were... I couldn't tell you. I know that we had Purdue University was one of the groups that someone from Purdue... I don't know. Okay? A, who it was. And there were others, I just don't. Would you be able to figure out who those people are by looking at your notes or something? My notes, no. Who would be the best person to figure that out with? A, you might ask Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman. All right, so at some point in time, it's fair to say that this whole business of runes was ruled out as a possibility of what was on those girls at the scene. Is that correct? Again, ruled out might be a finality kind of record. Is there any DNA linking Richard to the crime? No. Okay, is there any phone, computer, or electronic data that links Richard in any way to the crime? A, I don't know what all's been done with that stuff, so I don't know. Have you heard of anything that links Richard to the crime through his phone, computers, or electronics? Nothing that I recall. Okay. And because you said this business that there was maybe, at least it was theorized for a period of time, that there was a group that you can't remember the name of, a religious group. I think that you said that might have been involved, or at least that was a theory at some point in time. Was there any evidence at all that Richard was involved in some type of weird religious cult or group that A, not that I've been made aware of? Cue the timeline of, okay, here's a thing. Time of death. Has that ever been established, or at least a range of time that the girls were murdered? Has that ever been established? I can't find anything. A, I would have to review reports and autopsies and stuff. Q, I'm not the smartest guy, but I didn't see it, but it might be on there that I didn't notice. But I would think that would be kind of a big deal to know when the girls died, right? Is that right? So yes? Yes, you finally screwed up. So in Central Command, am I unified? Unified. I keep calling it Central. Did anybody in Unified Command ever try to determine from the autopsy or from anything what the time of death was that you know of? Yeah, I believe that. I believe they tried. I don't know that we actually got it. Well, one thing, we've talked to some doctors and stuff. I mean, that are friends, nothing. No experts that are going to be testifying or anything. But they said it would be important to know the temperature, the core temperature of the bodies at the time that they were found, or close in time to the time that the girls were found. Do you know if there was any core body temperatures taken, or any body temperatures taken ever? A. I don't know. Q. Who would be the best person to ask that question? A. CSI coroner. The state police CSI people? Yeah. Okay, do you know the name of the particular person? Like, would Holman be good to ask? I believe at the time he might be a person to ask. He might be, okay. Able to tell you a better person, but Brian Olehi, I believe, was kind of the CSI. Brian Ole, I believe, was kind of the, okay, a lead CSI. OLAHI, oh, I don't. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't. Brian Olehi, okay? Olehi, he's no longer with the state police. Oh, I think Indiana Gaming Commission. I have not seen that name anywhere. Okay, so he might be a guy to ask. Holman might be a guy to ask about. Again, time of death. All right? I have read the autopsy report. I think I remember that you were there. Is that right? Correct? Who else was in the room? A Kevin Hammond, Brian Olehi, another state police CSI from that area, and the pathologist, and I think one of his helpers, were. And I hate to even have to talk about this, but were the bodies like next to each other, or were they in two different rooms, if you remember? They got them out separate. They were in two separate bags. Okay, I don't think they were in the same room at the same time. And did you stay in for both of the autopsies? Yes. So was there a break-in between the two autopsies? I believe there was. Okay. And how long does an autopsy take? Like roughly? Was it like 10 hours or like more like an hour or 2 hours? Maybe a couple of hours, 2, 3 hours. Is there video? In some cases that I've had, there's video of the autopsy. Is there video in this case? Not to my knowledge. Okay. Had you ever met this doctor before? I had not. The pathologist? Okay, I don't have it with me, but the way that they phrased whether there was, it was kind of weirdly worded for me as a lay person about whether either one of them was pregnant. It didn't seem to be definitive. It was more, I think it was, but it caused me a little bit of pause. Was there any evidence as the autopsy was going on? Did the pathologist say either one of the girls was pregnant? No, not that I'm aware of. Okay, was there any evidence that either of the girls had been pregnant? No, not. Not that was brought to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge, no. Okay. All right, have you ever heard of a guy named Wayne Shepard? Doesn't ring a bell. Okay, now I'm going to move on to kind of this. I think we had sent Nick this. It's like 7 questions. And I'm going to just kind of tick off different, where are they? Different people. Let me see if it's in here. Where is that list of people? Do you have that? I have these 7 questions with sub-things, and I'm going to kind of go through them and ask you about these different people that were suspects, okay? So Ron Logan, we talked about him already. Why was this person ever a suspect or at least a person of interest? I believe a big part of it was the property. He owned the property where they were found. Which law enforcement officer and law enforcement agency was involved in the investigation of Ron Logan? FBI, I believe, was the main. You know, there's floating around on the internet is a probable cause affidavit. I'm sure you know about that. Do you know about that? No. The FBI put together, I don't know if this is why I'm asking if it's true or not. What's the name of that person that put it together? Nicole Robertson. What? Nicole Robertson. Q, do you remember Nicole Robertson? I do. Okay. Did she, Nicole Robertson, seek an arrest warrant or a probable cause, prepare a probable cause affidavit seeking an arrest warrant on Ron Logan? I honestly don't know if she was part of investigating that, but I don't know if she specifically. Q, had you ever heard that until I just said it a few minutes ago? About Nicole Robertson seeking a probable cause affidavit for Ron Logan's arrest? Had you ever heard that before? For his arrest for this case? Yes. Yeah. I don't think I knew that. Okay, is your memory that Nicole Robertson was hot and heavy for Ron Logan as the suspect on this case and thought he had committed these murders? I know that she was part of the investigation into him. It's like a riddle for me trying to figure out how to get whether I'm able to talk to FBI agents or not, but do you know where she's at right now? I have no idea. Okay. All right, we're still talking about Ron Logan. I'm on question 3, which is generally what investigation was performed in these subparts. Was Ron Logan interviewed? Yes. And who interviewed him, if you know? I don't know. Q, did you interview him? No. Okay, do you know if it was videotaped? I assume. Okay, there's this business about his alibi was a little goofy. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ron Logan's alibi? A relative in a fish store or something. Something about where he told a nephew or somebody, I think it was a nephew, tell the police that I was at a certain place. Does that ring a bell at all? Something along those lines, yeah. Okay, that could be a kind of a neon sign of, oh, this guy might have been trying to hide his whereabouts at the time these girls were abducted. Why did that alibi? Kind of his nephew, if that's accurate. Trying to encourage his nephew to change the whereabouts of Ron Logan. Why did that not hold any water in terms of the investigation? Could you ask that one more time? That was really one of those. That was like possibly the worst question of the day. So was there any, let me ask it this way, were there any issues that you know of regarding with Ron Logan's alibi, that it didn't stand up, or that there was a question about Ron Logan's alibi about where he was on February 13th? A, I would need to review reports, other people's reports for accuracy, but yes, there was something with a relative and he wanted him to say that he was with them because his license. If you're asking me why I think he wanted to say that, his license was suspended and he was looking at jail time, possibly if he was caught driving. Something along those lines. And you know, there's also this talk about what you said earlier that he was up, I think it was in Lafayette, but maybe not Lafayette, but at some exotic fish store or at a pet store, and he got some absurd amount of product from there. Almost as if to say, hey world, I'm here, and I'm not anywhere else killing girls or anything like that. That's out there. Did anybody check out that alibi to see if Ron Logan had actually gone to this pet store or exotic animal store? Yes, I believe they did. Was that you? No. Where would I learn about who checked that out? Who would be a good person to talk to? I think Nicole Robertson. Okay, and again, to my knowledge, she wasn't the only one looking into Ron Logan, but there's also been talk that Ron Logan's phone was pinging down near where the bodies were ultimately found. Have you heard that? No. Who would be best to learn that information, that's accurate? Any of the pinging. The FBI had what they called their CAST team there. Maybe someone from CAST? CAST? Yes. C-A-S-T? Correct. Do you know what that stands for? I don't. Okay. Where would I find out? I know for me and my experience, it's freaking impossible to talk to anybody from the FBI. They feel like they don't have to talk to anybody. Maybe Nick has better responsiveness from them than I do. But presuming I'm not going to be able to get a whole lot of help from the FBI, do you think that there were reports drafted about this pinging business from a CAST group of the FBI? I would assume that if there was someone saying that his phone was pinging, it would be in Ron Logan's file, yeah. Okay, you've already answered that. I don't know that you can answer this, but I'll ask it. How many reports do you think were drafted concerning this suspect, Ron Logan? Who drafted the reports? Where are those reports? Have those reports been given to the prosecutor? I have no idea how many reports were drafted. I believe he said that he was. Was there any investigation into whether or not others had access to the name? Yes. Anthony? Was it found out whether others were using Anthony Schott's account? I believe I would have to review other people's reports, but I believe he insinuated or said maybe his dad had access to that account, Tony Kline. Tony, I think he's coming up next. Do you know which law enforcement office agency was involved in the investigation of Kegan Kline? In the beginning, I believe FBI and Indiana State Police, and then it got revisited all by Indiana State Police. Okay, and when that's going on, and either Hammond or you are in charge of the Carroll County part of it, would they, whoever was actually doing the investigative work for the state police, would they check in with you periodically to say, hey, this is what we found out? Yeah. Was that part of it? We generally worked out of the same building and were, for the most part, kept up to date on a daily basis. Okay. What investigation was performed? Were there interviews of the suspect? Yes. Was that on video? Yes. Or audio? Okay. So we should have those. Were you involved in those? When he was arrested in Miami County, I was involved. Detective Vito from Indiana State Police, and I interviewed him at the jail very briefly, and I went to a few of the interviews, was not necessarily part of them but watched them behind the scenes. And I read somewhere that he basically claimed that his dad had done it, and he had dropped his dad off and all that kind of thing. Then I've heard that everything fell apart when you all took him to the area, but I only know generalities there. Am I even saying anything that's remotely accurate? I would say you're in the area, yeah. Okay, well just tell me then what happened there. Why, he did say, Kegan Kline did say, my dad came back bloody, and stuff like that. Is that A? I don't remember if he specifically said that. He did say that he was with his dad and drove here, and his dad left and went and did something and came back. And was that while he was in jail, Kegan Kline, that he claimed? Made that claim? Correct? Okay. And then at some point in time, did you guys get him out of the jail to go do something like at the scene? Yes. Okay. Tell me about that. I was not a part of that. Okay. Okay. Who was a part of that? A. Jerry Holman. Okay. And did Jerry talk to you about what happened when they were at the scene? A. Yeah. What happened according to Jerry? A. Again, maybe not verbatim, but Kegan said that they parked in the cemetery, I believe. His dad was gone for a while, came back. He told Jerry they were in some vehicle, told him how they got there, but no vehicle like he described that would have drove by the Hoosier Harvest store. There was nothing related to that vehicle on the video. Was it like, I say his name wrong, but was Kegan Kline challenged by Holman or anyone else? Like, you're not telling the truth, what you're saying doesn't add up to the crime scene? Was that kind of thing going on? Yeah, I believe they did. Okay, and we can find out more from Holman, but did Holman walk away thinking Kegan Kline is full of crap, basically? Yes. Okay, I assume so, yes. That's the legal vernacular for it. Was there ever a search warrant for? I recall with Richard Allen they were from the same place, and I believe Tony Kline they lived close together or something like that. A. Okay. And I appreciate you saying that because that's more Tony Kline related. But I mean, since Kegan is his son, okay? Do you know how Kegan got his first name? I know what his dad said, I believe, yeah. What did he say? There was a strip club in Logansport called the Kegan Stein, and his name is Kegan. Was Kegan Kline forensically connected to the crime scene in any way that you know of? A. Not that I'm aware of. Did he take a polygraph examination, Kegan Kline, if you know? I don't think so. Why not, if you know? I believe he declined it, and I believe he had an attorney tell him to decline it. Oh, okay. Did he ever confess to the crimes, Kegan Kline? That he personally did it? Right? Q. In the times that you were in the jail, and you were watching the interviews of Kegan Kline, those were videotaped, I'm presuming. Hey, say that one more time. When he was in Miami County, Kegan Kline, and you were watching him being interviewed, were these interviews videotaped? Yes. Okay. What time is it? 11. Okay. Let's go to Tony Kline. Why was he a person of interest or a suspect? Along the same basic lines as Kegan was. Was it more that Kegan had implicated his father somehow, or was it more independent of that Tony Kline was on your radar screen? I think someone else could probably answer that way better, but I believe it was because Kegan implicated, or there was the possibility that Dad had access to the Snapchat stuff too. Okay, what investigation was performed related to Tony Kline? Was he interviewed? Yes. Was that videotape that you know of a yes? Okay, do you know who interviewed? Was it you? A. I don't think I ever interviewed him. I believe Dave Vito Q. All right, A. Since he was the main guy on that. Was he asked about where he was? And did he provide an alibi, so to speak? I'm talking about Tony. He was, and I don't recall without reviewing what. Do you recall whether there was any issue with Tony Kline's alibi? I believe there must have been, but I don't recall what that is without reviewing. Okay. Do you know which agency was in charge of the Tony Kline? Kegan and Tony were Indiana State Police. Okay, were standard police tactics such as the Reed interrogation technique used on Tony Kline when he was interviewed? I don't know what training Dave Vito has. I don't know. Okay, all right. Dave Liebert, let's move on to him. Was Dave Liebert ever a suspect or a person of interest? Yes. Why? His close proximity again to where the crimes occurred? I believe he was on the Hoosier Harvest Store video. Yeah, I believe that was the cue. How did you know he was on the Hoosier Harvest video? How do we know? Because investigators had verified the vehicle and with him. Did he also say, yeah, that's my vehicle? Yeah, I believe him and his wife, yes. Okay, and her name's Teresa Liebert. Correct. Which law enforcement office and/or agency was involved in the investigation of this suspect? And we're talking about Dave Liebert. I don't know who specifically was. In the beginning, who specifically? I even talked to him at one point. I would have to review even to find out what that was about, but I don't know who was specifically working on Dave Liebert. Okay, and who would be a good person to find out about the Dave Liebert investigation? Who was involved in that? Again, if I had the reports and everything, I could tell you, but okay. All right. And do you know if Dave Liebert was interviewed? Yes. Do you know who interviewed him? I don't. Do you know if it was videotaped, this interview of Dave Liebert? Again, it should have all, for the most part, been recorded. Okay, do you know if he provided an alibi of his whereabouts when of the time frame the girls were murdered? And if the alibi? I don't know. Okay? By polygraphers, you're not talking about the guy that has 5 wives? No. I just want to be clear. All right, okay. Move on to a guy named Jimmy Dale Duvall. We all know that killers often come in 3 names. What about Jimmy Dale Duvall? Was this person ever a suspect or at least a person of interest? I believe so, yes. Q, and why is that? I didn't have anything to do with Mr. Duvall. I don't know. Do you know who did have something to do with Mr. Duvall? I don't. Okay, so would those questions that I've been asking, like whether he was interviewed, would you know that? I'm presuming he was, but same as you, I assume he was, but nothing that I can talk to. Q, do you know if Jimmy Dale Duvall has been eliminated as a suspect? Don't. No? And do you know if there's an active investigation regarding Jimmy Dale Duvall? There was not. When I stepped out, there was not. Okay, so that's information. So when you stepped out Jimmy Dale Duvall, that angle had been played out, correct? Correct. All right. So I guess you really don't know a whole lot. I can't really ask you a whole lot. Therefore, it would be a waste of time for me to find out polygraph and social media and pinging and the like. I can guess, but that's okay. Purely it would be a guess. And who would I find out more about the Jimmy Dale Duvall? I think we got his name off of what was it? It was something that we got that was like, I imagine it was like a PowerPoint presentation. Here's Jimmy Dale Duvall, something like that. Do you know who was involved in his investigation? Maybe I don't know. Okay, before I forget about it, I also wanted to ask about each of these guys if you personally knew. Because in a small town, people know people. Did you know Ron Logan personally beyond the time that you went over there because something was stolen? No, I did not. Did you know Kegan Kline personally? No. Did you know Tony Kline personally? No. Q, did you know Dave Liebert personally? No. Q, did you know Jimmy Dale Duvall personally? No. Q, did you know Brad Holder personally? No. Did you know, because I'll forget if I don't do it now, did you know Rick Redhawk? No. Did you know Michael David Schmidt? No. Did you know Patrick Westfall? No. Did you know Thomas Lincoln Wallace? No. Did you know Brad Weber? No. Did you know Daniel Nations? No. Did you know Derek German? I knew of him. How did you know of him? Just past criminal dealings. Were you ever involved in an investigation of Derek German? You mean for this case? No. Or any of the others? Yeah, the other cases. I know I've been to his house a few times. I don't know that I was ever actually the lead guy or taking care of it, just backing up other officers. Q, I noticed before. Well, was he arrested before the girls were murdered? Do you know that if he had been arrested? Had he ever been? Within, let's say, 3 to 4 months before the girls were murdered, had Derek German been arrested? I don't know. Did Derek German ever work as a confidential informant, to your knowledge? It's possible. You don't have any? I don't have any. Okay. A guy named Elvis Fields, did you know him? No. A guy named Garrett Kurtz, do you know him? Knew of him, but no. Okay, same way that you knew of Derek German, right? Not in a personal capacity, but more? Correct. Okay, some lady named Ashley Garth, knew of her? Knew of her the same? Gabe Ellis? I knew of him. Same way that you knew of Derek German? Correct. Okay. So we'll get back to who were we talking about? We started talking about Brad Holder? Yes. So I'm on to checking out alibis. Did he provide an alibi? Did it check out? I remember him. I remember seeing something about him working out. I don't know whether that checked out or what have you. Okay, and again, I don't know how this is all working out, but it causes me to think if alibis of anybody, including Brad Holder, were problematic, would that be something you would know? Or would that go to the unified command? These if. Most of these people that you're talking about were in the beginning, and mostly I did tips. So we knew about all of these. I know of all these people, but to get into the weeds and specifics, I didn't have a lot, almost nothing, to do with any of the names you read off. So for me to get in the weeds, everything that I'm doing would be guessing. But you do things would have been brought to us at that time, decisions made, and things like that. I just don't specifically remember. It's not something that there would be a report on that Joe Blow brought this to us, and he said this is what Brad Holder said. Okay? And we said, okay, stop or keep going. There's nothing like that. Okay. But you would have had access to all of the information related to all these guys? Correct. Okay. Let's see. Do you know if Brad Holder's phone was pinged or was his social media checked out? I don't know. Okay. Was there a search warrant for Brad Holder of his home or anything else? I don't know. Okay, who would, and I know who would be the right person to ask that? Again, I'm not saying I'm the wrong person. Okay? But if I had the file here, I could tell you at least, okay, who that person would be as well. Okay? So if somebody like Tony Kline or, Brad Holder or Brad Weber, would there be like one person in charge of that suspect? Generally speaking, whoever got assigned to Brad Holder in an investigative role, that was their case or that was their person. And then generally they would come back to us and say, when they're at a crossroads or something like that, and tell us, this is where I'm at. Tell Central, the unified command. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, what should we do from here? Okay. I'm glad I stumbled upon that, or you mentioned that. How would I figure out who was in charge of Ron Logan's case, or Kegan Kline, or any of these guys? Should be in the files. But how would it be identified? That's what I don't know that you're going to see anywhere where it says the lead investigator for Ron Logan is. We'll just use Nicole Robertson. I don't know that you're going to see that at all, but you'll see case reports. The reports should be in there on who mostly dealt with them. Okay. And they'll all be. So if Nicole Robertson from the FBI was doing one, and Jerry Holman was also working on Ron Logan if he has any reports, they would be in there as well, so Q. Okay, so maybe an imperfect gauge of who was in charge of an individual suspect might be the amount of work product. Kind of. That's kind of an imperfect way, but at least I now know that and understand that one person, generally speaking, was in charge of investigating a suspect. That's traditional. And there may have been more than one investigator, and again, I don't. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think I've figured out a way to do it. So if I see a report, let's say that Nicole Robertson is on it, I could ask her who was in charge of the Ron Logan. No, I don't know that. That's what I was getting ready to say. Oh, I see. I don't know that you can say there was not a specific you're in charge of. It would be like, and I don't know, I'll use, the three of you sitting at this table? Yeah, sure. And saying, he's in charge of Richard Allen's case. You're all 3 or 2 involved in Richard Allen's case. You're working together. So to say there was a person in charge, I don't know that you're going to necessarily see any piece of paper or anything like that where it says they're in charge. Like Kegan Kline, as I told you, Dave Vito was mostly the guy. Q got it. That was taking care of that. He had help. There were many people helping, so... Well, was it? How would it even get assigned to somebody? Like we're talking right now about Brad Holder. How would it get assigned? Hey, somebody needs to be in charge of Brad Holder. How would that even happen? Would it be unified command, or would it be like, hey, I got a tip on this guy, let me be in charge of it? Yeah. Well, that is one way, absolutely. Okay. If we were getting tips, a lot of times what we would do, we'd print those tips off, and someone that wasn't busy would come to us and say, "Hey, I'm done. Here's your next tip." So if it was someone that a lot of those names on your list were above average suspects, there would generally be more than one person working on it. So, okay. Well, and then we are on Brad Holder. So let me go down. I don't know if I asked this. Do you know if there were any audio or videotaped interviews of Brad Holder? I assume so, but I don't know. Okay, let's see. Has this suspect, Brad Holder, been eliminated as a suspect or a person of interest? I believe so. Okay, and then, I guess I need to ask, if I may, all of these again, all these names, I specifically did not have anything directly investigating to do with them. I could probably get you a lot of answers by reviewing Q, right? A, reports. Sure. A, you're talking about Brad Holder. Then that was 6 years ago and I knew the information then. I've not reviewed every person that's on that list. But those guys like Dave Liebert, Jimmy Duvall, Brad Holder, they were basically eliminated as suspects at some point in time before you left? A, I assume so. Okay. Well, was Brad Holder, there may have been a point for any one of them that we just ran out of things that we could check on. It may not mean we'd ruled them out. Okay. But they'd been covered as much as we could, and unless new information came up, so then it was at a standstill. The way that you said it earlier, when you stepped out of the Unified Command to take over as sheriff, as far as you know, Brad Holder had been eliminated as a suspect? A, we were no longer working on Brad Holder. Okay. Do you know when the work on Brad Holder would have stopped? Like, was it in 2017, 18, 19, 20? Again, I'd have to review, but I believe 2017, he was a person that was in the very beginning. Okay, and I should have asked that about all those people, but, okay, almost all those names you rate off were people from the very beginning. Okay, and were they stopped being worked on in terms of an active investigation in 2017? All of those people, Ron, Logan, Kegan Kline, Tony Kline? I guess not, because Kegan Kline, A, right? A, I could answer that question better for you as to when I left here. Was there anybody actively looking at Ron Logan? To my knowledge, no. Okay, well, let's do it those two ways then. At the end of 2017 and by the time you left. And you left in what, 2021 you said? A, no, 22. Oh, the end of 2022? Yes. So let's divide it into the way that you just did Ron Logan. Was it no longer an active investigation on this person at the end of 2017? A, I would have to review. And, okay, let's do Kegan Kline. Was he being actively looked at as a suspect by the end of 2017? At some point someone told us that he was in Las Vegas during the murders. So that could have been in 2017. We later found out in 2019 that that information was wrong, so new information came up. Right? And we looked back at Kegan Kline and Tony Kline. Q. And I want to say I want to use that end of 2017 as one marker, and then when you left at the end of 2022 as a different marker, and that includes if new information came up. So Kegan Kline, in my mind, the way you say it, there was an active investigation still going on in 2019 even though it had stopped before. Correct. So what about Tony Kline? By the end of 2017, was there any active investigation going on regarding Tony Kline? A, the same as Kegan, that it had stopped at some point. We got information and picked it back up. Dave Liebert. Was there an active investigation on Dave Liebert ongoing by the end of 2017? I don't believe so. Was there an active investigation going on related to Jimmy Dale Duvall by the end of 2017? I don't know. Fair enough. And that A, does that clear it up a little bit? No, that helps a lot. I'll move on because that does help me out. So I will ask, by the time that you stepped aside, January 1st, 2023 then. A. Okay, Q. Was there an active investigation going on Ron Logan? A. Q. Was there an active investigation going on December 31st, 2022 on Kegan Kline? A. Yes. Was there an active investigation going on December 31st, 2022 on Tony Kline? A. Yes. Was there an active investigation going on December 2022 on Dave Liebert? A. No. Was there an active investigation going on involving suspect Jimmy Dale Duvall December of 2022? A. No. Q. Was there an active investigation going concerning suspect at one point in time Brad Holder as of December 2022? A. No. Was there an active investigation going on concerning Rick Redhawk as of December 2022? No. Q. Was there an active investigation going on concerning suspect Michael David Schmidt as of December 2022? A. No. Q. Was there an active investigation concerning Patrick Westphal at the end of December 2022? No. Q. Was there an active investigation of Thomas Lincoln Wallace at the end of December 2022? A. No. Q. Was there an active investigation concerning Brad Weber at the end of 2022? No. Was there an active investigation concerning a guy named Daniel Nation at the end of December 2022? A. No. Was there an active investigation concerning Derek German at the end of 2022? A. No. Q. Was there an active investigation concerning suspect Elvis Fields at the end of December 2022? A. No. Q. Was there an active investigation concerning Garrett Kurtz at the end of 2022? A. No. Was there an active investigation concerning Ashley Garth at the end of 2022? A. No. Was there an active investigation concerning Dave Ellis at the end of 2022? Okay, so that'll help. That'll help some of this out. So was I done with Brad Holder? Was he polygraphed? Brad Holder, if you know? I don't know. Okay, and I'm not going to be able to ask you anything that you'll know about Brad Holder? No, I don't think so. Okay, so I've just got to figure out who was involved in that. Rick Redhawk, was this person ever a suspect or at least a person of interest? A. Yes. Why was that? A. Came off this, I believe we had a couple of tips, and I believe one of his tips was from some sort of counselor that had to stop seeing him as his counselor because of his behavior towards that person. Right? And he was a violent sex offender registry person. Which law enforcement agency was involved in the investigation of that suspect? I believe that was Carroll County. Carroll County. Okay, and do you know specifically who was involved in? A. I spoke with him. He had an arrest warrant for failure to register, and I spoke with him briefly at the jail the night he got arrested and got a buccal swab. And then I believe Mike Thomas in another agency helped continue with that. Okay, so he was interviewed? A. Yes. We're talking about Rick Redhawk. Did he provide an alibi and was it checked out? A. Yes. He said that he was staying with a friend, a girl, in somewhere else, another town. He was supposed to be registered to be living in Deer Creek in Carroll County, a little town, Deer Creek, up by Logansport. And he was staying with a lady friend somewhere else, said he was by himself, went and got gas and went to a store or something like that. And I believe eventually was it found that he didn't use his credit card or anything. I don't know where that investigation ended up at, but he provided some sort of alibi. Okay, and you've already answered this. At some point in time, the active investigation of Rick Redhawk was ended at least by December of 2022. Correct? A. Correct. Is that a yes? Yes, correct. Okay. A. Sorry. No, that's fine. Do you know if he was polygraphed? I don't Delphi. Okay. Okay? And you had said, what did you just say? You had said that Patrick and Brad Holder were in some religion or something. Is that what? Correct. Okay, tell me about that. Again, I don't know the specifics, but they were in some sort of religion. I believe on Facebook we found where they had done rune stuff or something, the investigators that looked into it. Well, that would seem to be a big deal. Runes, because you said the word rune earlier. Correct. So what? But you also said that by December of 2022, Patrick Westphal and Brad Holder both there was no more of an active investigation on them. So why was that the case? It would seem like if they're into a religion with these things that you're calling runes, and there were runes, potentially at least on the scene, that they would be pretty high-value suspects perhaps. A. Sure. And I would have to go back and review to text-restricted per court record rules. Videotape or audiotape them. I don't know that we actually said that, but that's a general investigative thing, is we like to record our stuff. Okay, we've gone over that the active investigation of Patrick Westphal ended at least by the end of 2022, correct? Correct? Q. Was he ever polygraphed, Patrick Westphal? A. I'd have to look to be accurate. I don't know. And again, I'll just have to look at the reports of maybe who interviewed him, and that might be a person, a resource to go to? Correct. Okay, then we've got Thomas Lincoln Wallace. Was he ever a suspect or a person of interest? He was. Okay. And why was that? I believe he was another sex offender, and I believe we got some tips on him. All right, and was he interviewed, if you know? A, I believe he was. And I'm going to presume that it's on video, so I won't ask that. But did he have an alibi, if you know? I would have to review. Okay, did you ever talk to him? Thomas Lincoln Wallace? All right, Wallace? Is it Wallace? Wallace. And was he polygraphed, if you know? I think most people were asked. That doesn't mean that I know whether or not they did or not. Okay, do you know if there was a search warrant related to Thomas Lincoln Wallace? A, not without reviewing his file. Q. Okay, so again, if I found a report or 2 or 3 of Thomas Lincoln Wallace, whoever drafted the report, that might be a better source to go to? Correct. Okay, Brad Weber, I know that he lived across the creek. I do know that. Did, and so was he, Brad Weber, a person of interest or a suspect? Q, why was that? I believe the proximity of where he was staying, and that was his mother's house, and he was staying in that house. Okay. Was there blood found in that house? I swear I heard that there was blood found in one of those houses across the street. Hey, I feel like Liebert's. Again, without reading. Oh, okay. Without reviewing it, I believe you're accurate in the Liebert thing. I don't want to swear to that. But, and Weber's, other than the proximity, was there anything more about Brad Weber that made him a suspect? Without reviewing, I don't know. Okay. I'm presuming he was interviewed? Correct? Q, is that right? A, yes. Okay, so we should be able to get that and presume it was videotaped. I know that by the end of 2022, he was no longer an active investigation related to him, right? And I vaguely remember he had an alibi that checked out. Oh, thank you. I didn't ask that. Okay, had an alibi that checked out. You probably don't know about the polygraph, or do you? I'd have to review. Okay. Pinging on his phone, do you know about that? A, I'd have to review. Okay, then we go to Daniel Nation. Was this person ever a suspect, or at least a person of interest? A, he was. Okay, and why is that? A, I believe he's one of them that I was gone. I really don't know. I could review his file, and again, you had access to all of the files anytime you'd want. Was there some type of, correct, central repository where everything was? Yeah, everything was at the command center. At the command center, so it wouldn't be of any value. I did read some article about Daniel Nation. He was in Colorado or something. A, correct. Q, is that? So you, A, I generally know, but again, to be a sworn testimony, I won't do that. Okay, sure. I'll move on then, because it doesn't sound like you would have a lot of knowledge, and again, I'll just figure out who investigated him and talk to them. Derek German. Now, that may be a controversial suspect, but was Derek German ever a suspect, or at least a person of interest? A, I don't know that I would ever necessarily classify him as a suspect, but he was looked into and to be vetted. Okay, and what law enforcement agency or officer was involved in the investigation, if you want to call it that, of Derek German? I would have to review. Okay, was he ever interviewed? A, yes. Yes. I interviewed him once. I believe one of the head guys on that was Murphy. Okay? But I would have to review. I don't know much about that. A, without reviewing. Okay, well, do you know about an alibi? I don't. Okay, and we know that by the end of December of 2022, he was no longer being actively investigated as a suspect. Is that correct? Correct. Let's see, polygraph administered, if you know? I don't know. Okay, pinging of his phone, if you know? I don't. I would have to review. Okay, Garrett Kurtz. I think you said you heard of him before, correct? Was he a person or a suspect, or at least a person of interest? A, yes. Okay, and why is that? I believe there was information developed that he had ties to Ron Logan, and Mr. Kurtz was in jail for another murder in Newton County, I believe. Okay? And was possibly being looked at for one in White County. Did he have an alibi that worked out, if you know? I don't believe so, but I would have to review to be accurate. Do you know which law enforcement agency was involved in the investigation of Garrett Kurtz? A, Indiana State Police. I went to an interview of him in jail, and did you participate in it or just watch? Myself and Dave Vito ended up getting into that interview. Okay, was there anything about that interview that caused you to think he is a suspect or continues to need to be a suspect, Or nah, he's not really a suspect? Anything about that interview? I would have to review too. Okay, get the specifics. And, A, I know he polygraphed. Oh, okay. How did that work out? A, I believe he failed. Okay, he failed. And that polygraph examination should be available, I'm guessing? Correct. And what about alibi? Did we talk about that? You asked and I'd have to review. Okay, and pinging and all that, you don't? Do you have? A, I'd have to review it. Okay, and when you say could you, I know it's maybe getting late in the game, but what do you mean by pinging? All of the, what is your version of pinging? Just that a phone is pinging off of a tower somewhere. And can we kind of establish where the phone was located? A, okay. Because we had the tower dumps from out there and we ran everybody. You know, anytime we got a phone number, we checked those against the tower dumps. Okay? And it doesn't necessarily mean I can answer your question any better, but would that, what you just described, be like one big document that's like, here's the phone number of this guy, or is it A? I believe there is a document of this phone number belongs to this person. It could be, I'll use Nick as an example. His office may have cell phones that he hands out to his employees, so it may return to the prosecutor's office, but Steve Mullen may own it. But yeah, we had all of the tower dump from around the crime time. I don't think I've seen that, so it should be on a file. Yeah, I don't doubt. There's just, as you know, there's just a freaking crap ton of stuff and an A. And the reason I asked that is because did we specifically ping Garrett Kurtz? I don't think we specifically did, but we would have checked any of his numbers that he would have provided, Q. You would have? And we got? Yes. Okay. Ashley Garth, was she ever a suspect or at least a person of interest? I don't think so. Okay. Gabe Ellis, was he ever a suspect or at least a person of interest? I remember the name, I remember he was looked into, but I don't know. Without reviewing, I don't know. Q. So all those questions I'm going to ask, I need to figure out who was investigating that. And I haven't left a whole lot of time for Brad. I mean, there's other things. I want to leave him at least 15 minutes, and I don't know how long everybody can stick around, but I didn't get to go into a whole lot of other stuff, so I apologize. But do you have mop-up questions, or? Yeah, let me ask him just a couple here. Okay. Reeve-in questions? Q. So Mr. Baldwin asked you earlier about these composites or the sketches. You recall those? Yay. Questions? Yes. Okay. So help me understand this. The first composite that was released was essentially the composite with what I'm going to describe as a person with a hood or a hat on, right? A, correct. Okay. And that composite was generated by which source? A Sarah Carbaugh. Okay. And the second composite, which he asked you about earlier, was the composite that was generated by Betsy Blair, right? Correct. Basically, I guess the question is, was it the information that she provided you on her own, without the assistance of others? Was it that information that was parlayed into that sketch that generated that sketch? She sat down with a sketch artist, and the sketch artist sketched what she was describing. Yes. Q. No one else played a part in generating that description other than the sketch artist? A. Correct. Just the art that went on, right? Betsy Blair and the sketch artist, and that second sketch was released in 2019? I believe so, yes. Okay, and that sketch involved what I'm going to refer to as the image of a younger male, white male. Is that accurate? Yeah, I would say. It appears younger. Yeah. Did you believe that the image from the first sketch, I'm going to call it the hoodie sketch, did you believe that that image was Richard Allen? That's one and the same person? The sketch that, so it gets confusing when we talk about the first. The Carbaugh sketch. Yeah, did I believe that was Richard Allen? Yeah, I believe she saw Richard Allen walking down the road. Yes, and that was her description of him? Yes. Okay, and then did you believe that Betsy Blair saw Richard Allen? Yes. And do you believe that the second sketch is also a sketch of Richard Allen? Yes. You agree with me that sketches have a lot of differences between them? Right. They're just sketches. They're not pictures. They're not photographs. It's just a sketch. I mean, the one obvious difference is that the ages of the two people seem to be fairly different, which You're looking at an older lady. What people see isn't always perfectly accurate. Betsy Blair, and I would have to look, but she described the guy in his late 20s to early 30s, and that's young to her. Whereas Sarah Carbaugh, I can't remember off the top of my head what she said the age of the person she thought was, but to her 20 to 30 that person can be older. So So what you're saying is it depends on whose perspective it is? Sure. But my question is, you think both of those people saw the same person? Correct. But yet they generated fairly different results when the sketches were released? Correct. It's very plausible that those sketches, if they're accurate, were different people? But based on the information and the facts that we have, I don't believe that's true. But you agree with me they don't look the same? Oh, they're not perfect. One of them again has a mask. One of them, the sketches, they put a hat on him that they had no idea was the correct hat. We had to tell people when we released it that the hat, not to take the hat into account. I'm not going to mark this at this point, but do you see this? Yeah. Is that the Betsy Blair sketch? Is there a mask on? No. I must be thinking of the Voorhees. Okay, so let's make sure we're talking about, the same sketches. Would you agree with me that there aren't a lot of similarities between the first sketch and the second sketch? Sure. All right, so when the second sketch was introduced to the public, what was the intent of that amongst the law enforcement command team? The intent was to generate more information about the case, to re-pique everybody's interest, to see if we could, spark new information to tell us who that person was. I mean, was it kind of a fishing expedition, for lack of a better phrase? I wouldn't call it that. Well, there wasn't really much of a connection between the two sketches. You knew that was going to generate some questions, right? Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, that's accurate. It was pretty obvious that the second sketch was going to cause the general public to say, hey, wait a minute, are you now focused on somebody else? That was a possibility. Did anyone outside of the law enforcement community put any pressure on you or your team to release that second sketch? Did anyone outside of law enforcement, is that what you said? Yes. Put pressure on us? Yes. No. Like Betsy Blair or one of the other people that were out there on the trail. Anybody like that? No. Why did it take so long for that sketch to be released to the public? Why 2 years or after the original one? I don't know that I have an answer, to be honest with you. We did not get the Carbaugh sketch done until June of 2017, and somewhere along the lines, it was just a unified command decision that we didn't release any of the Betsy Blair sketch. And when we got Carbaugh, we did. That part of it was that she was closer to this person walking down the road. Betsy Blair was 50 feet away. I mean, there was I'm sure a lot of discussion that went into why we were doing it. Were you part of the actual group, the command team that actually made the decisions to release those sketches? Yes. What role did Doug Carter play in that? None. So basically, I think you said this earlier, he was kind of a mouthpiece. Yeah, he. For you? Yeah, he's good at speaking to the public. And, the state police have a PR guy or a woman. I don't want to be insensitive here, but it wasn't that person that was doing the talking, right? No, not all the time. Sometimes, but not all the time. I recall Mr. Carter mentioning at one point that the person may be right here in this room. Do you remember those comments? Yeah, I'm going to call them kind of infamous words or famous words, so to speak. Right? Yeah. What was the purpose behind that? It was just a strategy that people helped us draft. A strategy going into that press release in general that day. It was a calculated statement? It was. It wasn't him just up there jibber-jabbering? Correct. What was the strategy? Just to put pressure on who the person was. Kind of ferret them out or flush them out of the bushes, basically. Attempt, but sure. I'm a hunter, so... Well, you can't immediately get on 25. You have to drive on 300 North under 25, back down to Main Street, and then you can get on Q. That was going to be my next question, because we're looking back in time, obviously, and I don't remember exactly what the logistics were. So that would have been the route to take if you wanted to get up on the highway? Correct. Have you timed all these routes? I have not, no. If you've worked in this community for a long time? Yes. Would you estimate that's probably the fastest route to get up on the highway and go down A? To get on the highway? Absolutely. In other words, you wouldn't have to go through town? Correct. Talking about Westville now, you said you went up there, you weren't really sure when? You don't believe that Rick was represented at the time? Correct? Was there a plan in place amongst the law enforcement authorities that went up there to try and interrogate him before you went up? I don't know that the word interrogate is the word, but talk to him. Yeah, that was the whole point of going up there. Was there anything at that point that was unique that you had learned since you arrested him that you wanted to address with him? Not off the top of my head. No, I don't think so. So nothing had really changed from the time of the arrest to that point. You were hoping to go up there and get a confession, I assume, just like most investigations, right? Sure. Okay. Andy asked you about what I'm going to refer to as ongoing investigations, and I think you said that you hadn't been involved in a whole lot generally in the past several months. In fact, you said you kind of currently cut out of this in January, right? I think I know the answer, but tell me why in January you kind of stepped down. A new role, sheriff. So was it because you had just other responsibilities and you didn't have time for this, basically? Correct. I have other responsibilities, still have meetings, and I don't want to say I'm not a part of it. I just haven't done any of the investigating or anything like that. I'm just going to ask you this question. Who were let's just say the 5 law enforcement officers involved in this case that you think had the most knowledge about the entirety of the investigation? Myself, Steve Mullen, Dave Vito, and Jerry Holman. So Mullen, Vito, yourself, Jerry Holman? Yeah, and who else did you say? Say them again. Q Mullen, Vito, Holman, yourself. Who's A.J. Harper? Harper. Was Tobe Leesenby very active in this investigation while he was the sheriff? No. Do you know why? He was the sheriff and not an investigator. And I know that from sitting in depositions like this and living around cops my whole life, I understand that not everything is like it is on TV. But where did the buck stop when it came to making the decisions about, hey, we're going to release this sketch or we're not? Was there somebody that was making the final call? Was there a chief, so to speak? A unified command. It was not one person? Not one person. While he's looking, I have a couple of questions, but keep looking. That way we can multitask here. Redirect examinator Baldwin. Could you say that the hat, what did you say about the hat on the sketch? Sketch number 1, the Sarah Carbaugh hat? I believe so. I believe they are. I don't recall ever seeing one. Again, that doesn't mean it's not here. I believe they are. I would have to double check for you to be accurate about that, but I believe they are. How many sketch artists do you believe worked on this case? The one from the Carbaugh sketch was from the FBI. The one that did maybe any other sketch that we had done was from state police, so I think just 2. Just 2 sketch artists total? Yeah. Q, there weren't multiple ones from the state police that you recall? A, don't think so, that I recall. I believe there was just one from state and one from the FBI. Candy asked you some questions earlier about who showed up on the scene. I think there was a Giancola, an Officer Yoder? Correct. And obviously a lot of other individuals out there, right? That were searching? Correct. Was there some admonishment to all of these people by law enforcement that they should not talk about this case? Not to my knowledge. Or what was at that scene? A, not to my knowledge. Kind of a gag order, if you will. Not to my knowledge. There were obviously a number of witnesses that were children, or minors, I should say, that were on or around the trail on the day in question. Would you agree with that? Correct? Kind of the same question. Were there directives from law enforcement for these people to not talk about any of this stuff publicly? Not to my knowledge. Key, back to the ongoing investigation questions. Are you aware of any other officers that are involved in this investigation that are actively interviewing witnesses or anything of that nature? It's ongoing this week, last month, and the last couple of months, because it sounds like you haven't been doing much on this. A, do I know who is doing those things? Do you know if anybody is out there? Yes. What's going on? I mean, you've got a guy in jail, so what is ongoing? A, they're still working on things with Richard Allen. I'm sure they're tying up other loose ends. I mean, I know they're still out there doing stuff, yes. Are these law enforcement authorities or officers communicating with you about this, about what's going on? Are you getting briefings? We had a briefing or a meeting not too long ago, but what else is there? Just I know that I don't know what they're specifically doing. Okay? A, if that's your question, I don't specifically know. What else is there to learn about Richard Allen? You mentioned it? A, I don't specifically know what they're doing. Okay, when do you expect to get another briefing on what's going on? A, when we decide we need to have another briefing and get everybody up to speed. Who decides that? Again, it'll just be a unified command thing. Somebody will decide to have that meeting. Did Nick send you kind of the bullet point list of topics that I offered up to him last week in advance of the deposition today? A, yes. Okay, and I'm sort of looking for it right now. I know it's here somewhere, but... Oh, I gave it to you. It's all right. Don't worry about it, Andy. It's fine. Obviously, we haven't covered all those topics on there. We got to a lot of them today. But did you come in here prepped to talk about all of those? Or did you just kind of A? Absolutely not. Okay? A, there's no way I was going to be prepped to be able to accurately speak on every one of those topics. Okay? Having a little bit more time between now, let's say, and the next time we might order up your deposition, you think you could take a look at some of those topics and kind of brief yourself, prep yourself a little bit better just with a little bit more time? I can sure try. Absolutely. Okay. Have you shared that list with any other officers? A, I have not, no. I know I'm not asking what he did. Yeah, I have not, no. I don't have anything else. So, do you want to review and sign, or do you want to waive, or do you know what I'm asking? I know what you're asking. I'd like to review it. And further, the deponent saith not,